Hey there YouTube, this is CFL Fanatic. I'm back again. I apologize that I didn't get last week's video up. Yeah, we had rehearsals and performances and I was pretty bogged down. So last week, I got the Calgary game against Winnipeg, although I have to say I thought Calgary would put on a bit more of a dominated performance. The Argos, just as I thought they were going to, came through for me once again. Way to go, guys. Saskatchewan, Hamilton, I definitely thought Saskatchewan was bad. I didn't realize they were quite that bad. Hamilton ended up picking up that win. BC, Edmonton, and I should have stayed as an Edmonton believer, but I didn't. I strayed. I went with BC, improving, showing that they're not quite as bad as their record would suggest, but whatever. So, after the two losses last week, I was 2-2. Schulte went 4-0. Wow. Yeah, so he caught up the ground that I had built on him. That takes my season total so far to 6-6, and Schulte is the same. So I lost the comfortable 2-game lead that I had on him, and now we're tied. So I'm gonna have to work a little bit harder if I want to catch him this year. Okay, so on to my 30-second rundown. After 3 weeks, we start in the East with the Montreal Alouettes. And what can be said about them? Solid offense, decent defense, nothing spectacular, but, their defense is pretty tight. Their offense, once again, continues to dominate. Calvillo continuing to shatter a whole bunch of records in the CFL, a whole bunch of Damon Allen's records that he has set, and Calvillo doing it in a shorter time, too. There's just really no stopping Calvillo at this point. Okay, on to the Argos. Their defense is a plus for the team. Their defense is pretty solid. Their offense is good when they want to be. The biggest problem with this team is turnovers, because the turnovers are getting ridiculous, and Cleo Lemon can be blamed for a lot of them. Cleo Lemon needs to have a shorter leash. I've never been a big fan of that argument, but this year I have to say yes. Hamilton. So after a completely sucky offense in the first 2 weeks, actually managed to pull it together and score 33 points against Saskatchewan. Now let's not get cocky though. It was against Saskatchewan, whose defense is absolutely brutal. This time around. So it leads the question, was it genuine? Well, it's hard to say. I will find out tonight when they play BC, but I don't know. I'm having a hard time believing it is. Winnipeg has a very good defense. Very good defense. Winnipeg, though, it is overlooked that they have a very weak offense. They really do. They're a 2-1 team. Their success, I think, has been overblown a little bit this year. I'm not a huge believer in Winnipeg yet. They have a 2-1 record, but that Argo win by 6 points despite 7 turnovers really doesn't inspire much confidence from Winnipeg. Saskatchewan. What can be said about them? Hit the panic button, I guess. 0-3. Their offense looked okay in the first 2 games and then just completely fell apart against Hamilton, and their defense, this is now the 3rd game in a row that they've looked absolutely brutal. I really am trying hard to see a positive for the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and I really can't find one. Calgary. Their offense has been pretty hit and miss this year. The biggest thing plaguing them is inconsistency. We've seen, especially in the BC game, we saw the first half Calgary's offense just could not get anything going, and then they just ignited in the second half, put up 34 points. It was impressive. So they don't have an overly impressive D, but they do have enough to get by, but they have played some weaker offenses so far. Meanwhile, Edmonton, the team who was easily the worst team in the league last year, is defying all odds and putting up a perfect 3-0 season to start. Their defense is decent, held Hamilton to 10 points, although looking at Hamilton that wouldn't be hard to do. But their offense is just clicking, and it's really unbelievable to watch. how well Ray is throwing these passes, how well the receivers, particularly Fred Stamps, are coming down with them. Okay, BC. BC is 0-3, and I will stress this again, I have before. I do not believe they're an 0-3 team because, they're doing a lot better than they would suggest. They only lost to Montreal by 4 points in Montreal. That's pretty impressive. Lost to Calgary by 2, nearly made the comeback, had some struggles last week against Edmonton, and I think that was more psychological. Their record is getting to them, but BC is a strong team, a much stronger team than their record would suggest. Okay, so without further ado, on to the picks for Week 4 in the 2011 season. First up tonight, Friday Night Football, Hamilton taking on BC. This is happening in BC. Hamilton looking to break even with their record. BC looking for their first win that has evaded them for so long. Now, like I said with Hamilton before, they had a better offense in Week 3, a decent defense in Week 3 too. Question is, was it genuine? We have to keep in mind that this is the Saskatchewan Roughriders, and they are just self-destructing right now. So the question is, can they pull it down against BC? Hamilton does have some positives, and if this offense is genuine, they can cause some damage. However, on the BC side of the field, Travis Lulay is looking strong. I think they're close to fixing their record. They're at home tonight. They have the body clock working in their favor as they're playing Hamilton at 10 p.m. Hamilton time. So I think I'm going to have to take the BC Lions in this one. Okay, on to the Argos. Finally, after 4 weeks, get their home opener and get to go back to the Rogers Centre for the first time since June 18th in their first preseason game. They finally get to go home, and they're taking on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So, for a rebuilding Toronto team, Winnipeg is a good place to start because I don't think Winnipeg is an overly good team. They're not quite as good as they have a 2-1 record right now, but their wins have been less than impressive. Their defense helped them win against Hamilton. 7 turnovers, and Toronto was still in the game last week. That doesn't say good things about Winnipeg. So Toronto can win this game, but they have to win the turnover battle. And right now, Toronto is not showing me that they can win the turnover battle. I really want to pick Toronto in their home opener. I really want them to break even, but I have to take Winnipeg solely based on turnovers. All right, Edmonton and Calgary. So we've seen Calgary. Obviously, last year, Calgary was a strong team, whereas Edmonton was at the bottom. Edmonton was doing very poorly. Calgary was just dominating. This year, it's kind of the opposite. Despite a 2-1 record, Calgary is underperforming. They're performing relatively poorly. Right now, they're doing enough to skate by, and right now, what they're doing, this hit-and-miss offense might be enough to get by BC when they're having an off day. It'll be definitely enough to get past Winnipeg. However, what they're doing right now is not enough to get past Edmonton. This defense gave up 20 points to a Winnipeg offense that that I really don't think is all that good. Compare that to what Edmonton's offense is gonna bring to the table, and I think it's a no-brainer. Last year, Calgary swept all 3 games against Edmonton, but this year Edmonton is looking much better than Calgary, and I have to take them to win this game. All right, so on to the Sunday game, Saskatchewan and Montreal. These two teams played 2 weeks ago, and now they're playing the rematch in Montreal. So Montreal, Calvillo, we'll see if this week he can destroy a couple more records while he's at it, because he's just knocking them down left, right, and center. It's unbelievable. Montreal has an incredibly solid offense, which sucks for Saskatchewan because they happen to have no defense to speak of right now. Montreal has a decent defense. Like I said, they're not fantastic, but if they were enough to stop Toronto's offense, I think they're more than enough to stop Saskatchewan's offense. I expect Saskatchewan's offense, at least, to come out with a bit more firepower. They had a bad week against Hamilton, but I think that Saskatchewan's offense is a bit better than that. But, let's be serious. Saskatchewan's defense up against Calvillo, I'm going to take Calvillo and the Montreal Alouettes every time. in that matchup, especially this year. All right, so those are my picks in case you missed them. BC over Hamilton, Winnipeg over Toronto, Edmonton over Calgary, and Montreal taking down the Saskatchewan Roughriders. It's shaping up to be an interesting season, but it's only 3 weeks in, so if your team is doing great, don't get cocky. If your team is doing bad, don't worry too much. There's still a lot of football to be played, and I will see you next week.